Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, how are you? I got the intro right after 4 takes today.
I'm still dying at the boing-yoings that unfortunately, the listeners cannot hear. Bennett, for the first time in probably well over a year, messes up the intro, and I think that sets up well for how this podcast is going to go after a Georgia State beatdown and a Royal Rivalry week that is here, and it's going to boing-yoing our way to another win.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably one of their more complete games of the year. We were there. So I've been to 2 games now, and have you been to the third? I feel like you might have been to the third.
No, just Charlotte in this one.
Okay, so we've gone to 2 games, and they've won both games by a combined score of 68-14.
That's pretty good.
They like our presence.
You could be telling a lot of people that they like our presence, but we're not allowed around it.
That's right.
But Jets exactly podcasters right. are.
Yeah, good to see obscure Jets podcasters covering the team. That was one that I've been waiting for much of the season.
We're not jaded.
Just a little. Anyway, nice win.
Nice win. And you know what else is nice?
Bet online.
Bet online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform. Don't fact check that, folks, and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds they do have very early odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. They also have FCS lines, the earliest anyone does if you're into FCS betting. Typically, you can find a lot of great value betting FCS if you even vaguely follow the sport now. With the largest selection of odds from everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, and all of the MMA world. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site, Asterisk, for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Heck yeah.
And this podcast, no outline. We're freewheeling it today.
We're freewheeling.
Granted, it's after this, 6-7 years of doing this, we do have to get to news or snooze. Remind me to do news or snooze.
We will. I've got an interesting way to do news or snooze today.
Our friends at Cinnamon Bear need that news or snooze segment because we have forgotten it the last 2 weeks. That's on us.
That's on us, Cinnamon Bear.
And we will make it up to you, Cinnamon Bear, by ordering vast amounts of baked goods next time we're in Harrisonburg.
Many Cinnamon Bears.
Sure. I wasn't going to go Cinnamon Bears. I was going to go other baked goods like blueberry muffins or bagels and cream cheese, but that's also an acceptable one.
Okay.
Are you a Cinnamon Bear guy?
Am I a Cinnamon Bear guy? Yeah, of course I'm a Cinnamon Bear.
No, like Cinnamon Bear, the pastry.
Yeah, I would eat anything with cinnamon, I think.
Okay. Do you like Big Red?
I love cinnamon.
Do you like Big Red?
No. Like baked cinnamon kind of thing. Not like the big. I'm not like a extra spicy cinnamon thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. Didn't know you were a big cinnamon guy.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been friends for how long? And I never even knew you were a cinnamon.
We never even got to cinnamon yet.
We've gotten to oregano, basil, rosemary. We don't know the earth spices. Yeah. Next week we'll talk about pumpkin pie spice.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. So this podcast isn't about cinnamon or bears. But do visit our friend Cinnamon Bear right across the street from the AUBC in Harrisonburg next time you're in Harrisonburg. This podcast is talking about JMU taking down Georgia State, and then we'll preview the Royal Rivalry because I think there's more meat on the bone when it comes to the Royal Rivalry game this week than there necessarily was from the JMU game against Georgia State. I mean, it was a solid 38-7 win. Offense fired on all cylinders. It was a really well-balanced attack. Alonzo Barnett looked healthy, looked good. And the running game looked very good. Shout out our boy Joby Mallory getting 9 garbage time carries.
Yeah.
That's big. But where do you want to start with Georgia State? Because there's a lot of different ways you can go. We can talk about the elite level play of the defense. We can talk about Eric O'Neal being the best player in the Sun Belt. We can talk about Alonzo Barnett returning to early season form. Where do you want to go? We can talk about offensive line play with Carter Sweezy returning and all of that fun stuff.
There's a lot of ways we could go with this, as you said. I'll say for me, the big one is just that they're like back on track and they did what they were supposed to do after the bye against a bad team, right? So their last 2 Sunbelt opponents don't have Sunbelt wins in Southern Miss and Georgia State, but 38-7, there was never really a doubt because they got off to such a fast start. JMU did, I think, what did they score touchdowns on like their first 3 drives or something? So they got off to a really strong start, put the game out of the reach, held on. You could make a case that some second half stalled drives. It's disappointing in some ways they didn't get over 40. They had a legit chance, I think, to get over 50 if they had made a few plays down the stretch of this game. But 38-7, it was very similar to the Coastal game that was 39-7 in some ways in terms of just controlling the game for much of it. Although they controlled this one from the first quarter on, where Coastal it took them into that second quarter to get control. They've been really good at home this year, kind of outside of the Gardner-Webb game, which is weird. But they've been really good at home. They've been great after their 2 bye weeks. They did what they were supposed to do. Barnett looked healthier and sort of alluded to an ankle injury with Dave Riggert in the post game that seems to be healing, which is helpful and probably explains why he struggled in some of those previous games. But they got the ball out quickly in the passing game. Defense looked really dominant up front. Offensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. I thought it was a complete performance, which is nice because I feel like there's been a few times in recent weeks where we've been really frustrated following this team that they aren't playing to their potential. So to see them kind of play to it in all 3 phases was nice because this 3-game stretch coming up is going to be pretty intense.
As I've said, and I will continue beating this drum, they got ODU on the road, ODU coming off of a bye, App State on the road, App State coming off of a bye, and then they finish up against Marshall at home to finish out the season. Marshall not off of a bye, but Marshall could very well be playing for a potential Sun Belt title. So JMU could be playing kind of spoiler there, depending on what happens with Georgia Southern as the year goes along. JMU did rush the ball 52% of their plays. They passed it 48%. That's essentially what they've been doing for a majority of the season, a very well-balanced attack, just about a 50-50 split. But the running game was effective. They seemed to lean on it at right points. And in the second half, it really felt like kind of like in the Coastal game too. And I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this, but a win is a win. And, I'm not going to nitpick too much after one of their most dominant wins of the season. But I don't love kind of pulling off the gas a little bit in the second half, which is what it felt like. It feels like, okay, we got up. They're not doing anything against our defense. There's no way they overcome this deficit. We're just going to go kind of vanilla and play it out. I wish they kind of had more of a killer mentality, I guess you could say, where like we want to step on your throats and put up 52 or 60, because the way they started and through that first half, if they had just copied and pasted that first half performance, they probably would have gotten over 60 in this game and really took it to Georgia State. But Georgia State had some good plays in the second half. They were able to slow down JMU's offense, I guess you could say. But as my voice goes out there, but overall, really, really solid performance. It was great to see George Pettaway get nearly to 100.
Yeah.
Delvin Joyce brought this up onto the house where it seems like they cap him at 13 touches. Like he hits 13 and then it's just like, all right, you're done. Cause 4 times this season he's hit 13 and has not gotten another touch. And I think the most he's carried the ball in a single game was like 15 times. But it was great to see him play. Joby Mallory, like we said, got 9 carries. Wayne Knight looked electric when he was in. Really, really good stuff. And my biggest takeaway from the game is the offensive line play, because that offensive line pass blocking, I don't think they allowed a sack. They looked like the early season offensive line that we saw against UNC and Ball State. And it's really good to see that group. The one we saw mostly out there was Jesse Ramil on the left side alongside Josh Toner, Brett Davis as the center with Cole Potts and Pat McMurtry. Tanner Morris goes down. Not sure how long Tanner Morris will be out the starting center, because the reports were just that he's okay, but
we'll get to that in a second.
But Chesney has said guys are okay before, and then Iowa Dei has never played again, and actually took a red shirt for the entire year. And okay can mean a lot of different things in coach speak. Would have loved a definitive timeline on when he would return, but Josh Toner and Cole Potts, man in the middle. And I really like I know Carter Sweezy. You gave me a hard time about this, Bennett, because I was really big on Carter Sweezy making the return. 12 snaps for him. He looked good in those 12 snaps, just the model of consistency. But I think more so the fact that he's able to return to that rotation, and it allows, Josh Toner to continue doing what he's been doing very well this season, potentially slotting in, giving Cole Potts some snaps off, move Josh Toner over to right guard a little bit more. and you can see kind of more of those rotations happening on the interior of the line. But I mean, that offensive line play was fantastic. Toner had his best pass blocking grades of the entire season. Ramil and McMurtry continue to do what they've been doing on the outside. That offensive line is a big reason why Alonzo Barnett was able to have such a good performance.
Yeah, it's been a nice group this year with guys stepping up. You mentioned Toner stepped up with some injuries. Brett Davis stepped up at center. But like Pat McMurtry's just been so good all year. 76 grade on PFF for the entire season. He's never really had like a huge off day, which has been super valuable at right tackle. Ramil's been nice this year, especially of late. Yeah, the offensive line I think is very good. They did a nice job getting the ball out quickly, and I think that allows the offensive line to look as good as it is, where there have been times in recent weeks where they're allowing pressure to get home and there's too many guys to even block, and it makes fans be like, oh my God, the offensive line sucks. They definitely had a dip the last couple of weeks, but for them to bounce back was solid. They're going to need that group to be really effective the rest of the way if they want to maintain sort of these 30-plus point offensive performances. Because in their two losses, that was really the issue is the defense had, maybe not their best games, but they forced 4 turnovers against Georgia Southern. They only allowed 14 offensive points to ULM. And then you look at the offense struggling a lot in those games. That was really the reason. So if they can keep the offense at sort of this baseline level of competence where they're not getting sacked a bunch, they're moving the chains, they can get near 30 points, they're going to have a good chance to win out. If they can't do that, which has been the issue a lot this year, it could get interesting the last 3 weeks.
It was fantastic to see Alonzo Barnett too return to his early season form. His 4 worst games of the season, Southern Miss, ULM, Coastal Carolina, and Georgia Southern, all happened when he was potentially battling this injury that he alluded to with Dave Riggert. I think he said what ankle as kind of an illusion of like, did you read that as like what ankle? Like, haha, I didn't have an injury, or like what ankle? Both of them are hurt.
He made a joke that like he was okay. So Riggert asked the question that was like, I'm not going to ask you about your ankle, which was like, or I know you're not going to talk about your ankle. So Dave Riggert essentially said that he has an injured ankle. Okay, without saying it. And then Alonzo made a joke where he was like, oh, what ankle? Like, I'm fine. Clearly, he's had an ankle injury the last few weeks that they haven't explicitly said, but like not very hard to put 1 plus 1 together and get to 2. So he's been banged up. I think the bye week helped him a lot. If I'm not mistaken, he was more willing to scramble in this game. I think the stats bear that out.
He actually scrambled the most in this game he has all season, 4 designated scrambles. So how PFF defines a scramble is when it's a clear passing play. He tucks it and runs. He did that 4 times, tied for the most all season, tied with his UNC game. He created 12 first downs. And the biggest thing, the lowest pressure to sack ratio he's had all season. He was only sacked 11% of the time when he was pressured. I mean, that is a great number to see.
I think he's been taking sacks because of his ankle. Like there have been times where he sits in the pocket and we're like, why is he sitting in the pocket? I think it's because he didn't think he could get out of the pocket. So his plan, I think, was like, I'm going to try to find a guy. And then it wasn't happening. He was like, oh God, and was just eating sacks. But now that he can actually evade pressure and trust his ankles, it's getting back to sort of the grades that you saw the first 4 weeks of the season. I mean, he really had struggled against Georgia Southern. I don't think he was 100%. But you look at the way he has played when he seems like he's got that explosive burst as a runner. I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5. So I'm excited to see what he can do the last 3 weeks. And I also think they should do anything they possibly can, whether it's like limiting practice, giving a rest day if he needs it or whatever, to make sure that he is healthy for the last 3. Because the offense, when he can't run, looks pretty terrifying.
It is insane how it's insane how different this offense looks when Alonzo Barnett can run, get around, move in the pocket, extend plays, scramble. His 4 worst games of the season, Southern Miss, at ULM, Coastal Carolina, at Georgia Southern. In those 4 games, he combined to have just 4 big-time throws. He had 2 big-time throws against Georgia State. So 50% of all of his big-time throws from weeks 6 to 9, he had in 1 game. And it feels like he's finally returning to that big time throw capability. And a big reason for that is he's able to maybe extend a play for a beat longer, get Dollison open down the field. And I mean, he did that in this game, hit Dollison on a nice little post route. Dollison took it to the house. Listen to the house drops every Monday.
The receivers still aren't really helping him. Like Taylor Thompson dropped what would have been like a 70-yard
Hey,
touchdown pass.
they still drove down the field and scored on that drive. That doesn't matter.
To Taylor Thompson. But like there's
It
some
doesn't
stuff.
matter. See,
Well, there's some stuff there that like his stats would look better if he had a 70-yard chunk play and had a 50-yard touchdown. So like there's some stuff there. Petaway dropped one, I think, 2 weeks ago against Southern Miss that probably would have went for like a 40-yard gain. So he's getting some tough luck with drops. JMU has dropped 22 passes this year. 21 of them have been on Barnett throws. I think the 22nd was Maxwell Moss with Billy Atkins this weekend. But there have been 21 drop passes on Barnett throws. The team's 22 drops are the most since like at least 2018 or 2019. And I think PFF like doesn't have complete data for JMU beyond that. So basically, since PFF has tracked JMU closely the last 5 years or so, this is the most drops by any JMU football team in that span. So we talk about Barnett and sort of some struggles. He's had some tough luck with some passes getting batted down, and he's had some really tough luck with drops. So I still think he's a top end quarterback in the Sun Belt, a top end quarterback in the group of five. I think ideally his receivers can help him out the rest of the way. They continue to protect him with the offensive line because he is good. And if they can find ways to get the ball out quickly, which they've done nicely the last 2 weeks, move him a little bit in the pocket sometimes, get those guys involved, catch some passes, they could go on a run. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean, even if they're not catching passes, I think they can still go on the run. Because if you're passing it 48% of the time and your running game is doing what it was doing against Georgia State, knocking off 5.8 yards per play, getting 0.1 EPA per play, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. If you can do that 52% of the time, that's pretty good.
I liked it. I liked the performance.
It was a very, very good performance. And the defense also had a very good performance.
I love the defense, man. I really do.
Elite?
I think so. Eric O'Neill continues to be a dog. Eric O'Neill might be impossible to retain. I'll try to refrain from talking too much about roster management before we get to the end of November. But like he's got a PFF grade. He's like the 7th highest graded defensive end in the FBS. 2nd highest in the Sun Belt. Mike Green for Marshall should win Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. Dude is gross. Like his PFF grade, I think he has like 17 and a half tackles for loss and 11 sacks. Mike Green at Marshall. I don't know how he's still at Marshall. I think the Athletic put him in. He's like a redshirt sophomore. The Athletic had him inside their top 50 for the NFL draft. That's a redshirt sophomore in the group of 5. So he is legit. But Eric O'Neill is right there with him in terms of some of these stats and hanging around. So I think Eric O'Neill, if he's not first team All Sun Belt, should be second team, putting up great stats. Torres Jones was very, very good with Jacob Dobbs out to the point where, like, I would like to see a higher snap count for Torres Jones down the stretch. Like, I think he's getting dinged way too much for a brutal Charlotte performance where he missed a lot of tackles. But since then, he's actually been very steady in his snaps. So I hope they can find ways to work him in. Amar Thomas had what I thought was his best game of the season, which was nice to see. He had a sack. And then defensively, like, secondary's pretty good, man. Secondary's pretty good. Chauncey Logan's not getting a ton of run at this point. And you want to talk roster management, would not be surprised if he leaves. I don't know how well he vibes with this coaching staff. But like Terrence Spence, one of the first plays of the game, they throw a deep ball. Spence is one-on-one with someone and completely locks him down with ease. Like it was just, I don't know. The D's incredible, man. Lyle Hemphill is incredible. Talk about retaining people.
The D is incredible.
The D is incredible, man.
Phrasing, man.
That's right.
Torres Jones has not missed a tackle since week 5.
I want him playing more.
Torres Jones only missed a tackle. He missed 4 in the Charlotte game, but only missed 1 against Ball State. Rest of the games this season that he's played in, he has not missed a tackle.
Yeah.
And he's getting 36 snaps against Georgia State, his highest of the season. He played 24 against Southern Miss, just 10 against Georgia Southern, 9 against ULM, 5 against UNC, had 15 against Gardner Webb, but like he's just not getting the amount of snaps that you'd expect to see out of him. And at one point, he was an all Sun Belt caliber linebacker.
Yeah, I think he's getting the short end of the stick here, and some of it's because they brought in Jacob Dobbs, who is like a very good tackler. Yeah, they play that position, and I think also too you've seen it with the Holy Cross guys. Like Chesney has so much trust in them that he wants Dobbs on the field all the time, which makes sense, right? He's the captain of the defense and leading the defense and all that stuff. The one player that I think, I guess the only questionable spot, because McMurtry's playing at like an all Sunbelt level. Terrence Spence is what he's like leading the country in interceptions. Dobbs is leading the team in tackles. I think the one where maybe Wayne Knight should have gotten more run over Tyler Purdy, and that's one where I think they probably trusted Purdy more in that system, or even Mallory or whatever. But like, it's kind of hard to fault Chesney for trusting the Holy Cross guys, given how they've played. But at the same time, like as JMU fans, you've seen Torres Jones for so many years, and you're like, God, like we know that dude can stop the run and make these plays, and his coverage grade has not actually been that bad this year. It's right around like 70. I don't know. I want to see him more. I like that guy.
He's coming off of his third highest graded performance of the season against Georgia State, a 74.3 defensive grade per PFF. Torres Jones, though, great to see him step up in that way, play a solid role in it. Interesting was to see Chauncey Logan in person at the game. I thought maybe he was still battling through an injury. Maybe this is me creating something that doesn't need to be created. Maybe this is me stirring the pot on it. But definitely feels like Chauncey Logan is been benched. Definitely feels like he's now like corner 3 behind Terrence Spence and Jordan Taylor.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's been solid enough when he's been in there. I mean, there were a couple like tackles and attempted tackles you could tell Chesney was mad at the Georgia State game, where he went in with like a shoulder and his hands were almost like in his pockets. And I think Chesney was mad that he wasn't wrapping up. You've seen that the last few games that he's played with some of the tackling grades. So maybe there's just some frustration there. I don't know. But he was in the portal last year. They retained him. And I think his snap counts dwindling is at the very least something to keep an eye on the rest of the year.
Check out To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce. To the House drops every Monday, and it's bringing you the best content around JMU football. Delvin gives his takes and his insights on everything happening around JMU football. To the House, new episodes drop every Monday. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network to never miss an episode. Missed a couple weeks in the middle of the season, returned to play in week 7 and 8. Did not have a defensive snap in week 9 against Southern Miss, and then had 21 defensive snaps, which is his second lowest of the season, behind only the Coastal Carolina game. He's coming off of his second worst graded performance behind his Georgia Southern performance. Not great.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
I'll see what happens. Anything else you want to hit on from that Georgia State win, 38-7, where the Dukes seemingly did whatever they wanted? Am I mistaken? There was not a pick in that game.
No, I think the only turnover was the muff punt.
Which is wild that JMU's defense was able to do that. They did a great job at slowing down their running attack. They only allowed 46 rushing yards, which scary good. Reminds me of the Kurt Signetti era. They were averaging negative 0.2 EPA per rush, and they ran it on just 35% of their plays because I think they realized, we're unable of running it. And I just got to shout out real quick Lyle Hemphill's defense, which ranks 6th in the nation in stop rate. They do not allow the opponent to score on 77.9% of all drives, and they're allowing just a 1.28 points per drive. Really just elite level stuff. Those are both the highest marks in the group of 5.
I also thought it was funny how earlier in the year, after a game or two, we're like, this bend but don't break system. These guys are just out there and they're not as dominant. They're not getting the sacks. They're averaging 3 sacks a game now because they've had a few massive sack performances. They're obviously forcing a ton of turnovers. Indiana is only averaging 3.1 sacks. So it's 3.1 to 3. Very similar levels of like elite defense from last year to this year. Different in some ways, right? Jalen Green isn't here with his gazillion sacks, but the turnovers they're forcing, they are stopping the run at a high level. They're creating sacks. I mean, they're just objectively better in coverage this year and more consistent in coverage.
So much better. Like, it's not even close. The play in the secondary this year puts last year's secondary to shame.
With some of the same guys too, like Barksdale and Jacob Thomas are just like better players.
Yeah. It's like much better.
I've been very, very impressed by what they've done defensively. And to go from last year being dominant to again being dominant is incredible. And if they can figure out just ways to scratch together enough offense, it could be a very fun stretch run here.
Heck, if this is the Alonzo Barnett we're going to get for the remainder of the season, I don't think they have to scratch together any offense. Maybe I'm a little too bullish, but
Ooh.
this offense won't return to UNC Ball State levels, but I don't think we'll see, the Georgia Southern ULM type of offense. If he's healthy, they can be looking really solid. Maybe the Coastal Carolina type of game and things of that sort. I think if Alonzo's healthy, if Alonzo's playing like he did against Georgia State, there's no reason why they can't win out during this final stretch.
Man, it's interesting. And it feels like a little legacy stretch here. I'm going to ask you this because I was thinking about this yesterday. Last year's team, incredible, right? They start 10-0.
Yep.
They did kind of fall on their face at the end of the year. Like the
What do you
app
mean?
loss is tough in hindsight. It's your rival. Game day's there. That effectively squashed the lawsuit talk because then right after that they
The
sort of shut
lawsuit
it all
talk was a
down.
bunch of BS the whole time. Sorry.
Maybe it was, but they squashed that. They can't play in the Sun Belt Championship because of the rules. They played in their bowl game, but the coaching staff left. They lose to Air Force, then they lose their coach already left. So their coach leaves, then they lose to Air Force, then a bunch of players officially leave. Like that was a pretty bummer of like a Christmas for in terms of JMU football fandom. Like that was tough, man. They lose that game, all the players are bailing, kind of stinks. What if they match last year's record? Like what if they win their last 3 and their bowl game? They're 11-2. They will have beaten App State. They'll be the first JMU team to ever win a bowl. Are they on par with that 2023 team? Is it at least a conversation?
No, your podcast did not freeze. I'm thinking. You make some good points. I don't know. I don't know.
Because let's say they do it. They lose to Georgia Southern. They're 5-2. So they would to get to 11-2 it'd be 6 straight wins. There's a path that the wins would include. Well, it could be ODU, App State, Marshall, and then maybe like Liberty. Like, can you imagine if this team's last 4 were taking down ODU, App, Marshall, Liberty in succession?
I think this team, I think it would be better than last year, but I think you got to win I think you got to be in the Sun Belt Championship game.
I think that could definitely ding them. I also think
like not winning the East after winning the East for 2 years, that dings you.
It definitely dings you. I just think it's like could be a sneaky conversation where I think after Georgia Southern, people were maybe souring a little bit and really frustrated with the offense, where it's like this could still go down as like one of the better JMU football teams ever if they go on a push here. Otherwise, I think they'll still be viewed as like a very good, above average, nice year one for Chesney. But they have a chance to be more than that. They could go 11-2. What if things break their way? What if they do have this magical run and Georgia Southern collapses and they get into the Sun Belt Championship?
I think if they go on a magical run, they get into the Sun Belt Championship, this team is far and away better than last year's team. Like, I think we will remember this team more fondly.
I think so too, especially because they're probably going to keep the coach and some of the players. So like you could go into the offseason with the vibes being a lot better because the vibes last year at the end of that sucked. Where like the bowl game where they talked about like the triple option Avengers volunteer coaching staff and they like couldn't stop a fullback dive. So it was like fun in theory, like, yeah, these guys are going to coach them up. And then you turn the TV on, you're like, what the, this is not working. It was a tough way to end the year. It was bad vibes, but they could have much better vibes going into next year, which could make this team be viewed really positively.
If they're not in the Sun Belt Championship though, I don't think this team will be viewed as a better team than the 2023 team. I think it all hinges on a Sun Belt tournament, a Sun Belt championship. Maybe not even a Sun Belt championship, just a Sun Belt championship appearance.
If you lose it though, then you get a third loss.
Yeah. So I think it hinges on that and on that game. And maybe I've talked myself way too much into this and I'm wearing my purple colored glasses when I say this. I don't think a Georgia Southern meltdown is off the table.
I don't either.
like they've melted down like every year under Clay Helton to finish out the season. The one thing that's against JMU in this case is 2 of the last 3 games for Southern are at home where they typically play really well. But like Georgia Southern is known to melt down.
It could happen.
It could very well happen. He's got to lose 2 out of 3.
Got to lose 2 out of 3. The Troy game is actually not a slam dunk like Georgia Southern win. I think they're like an 8-point favorite at home, but Troy looked nice their last time out. Both teams coming off a bye. They can run the ball decent. Georgia Southern's not great against the run. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Maybe. I'm excited for it. All right. So the Royal Rivalry is finally here. We've all had this day marked on our calendars since the schedule came out. Can I say a hot take?
Yeah.
I don't think ODU is our biggest rival.
Well, news or snooze, we'll get into some rivalries.
Okay. So we'll save that, pocket that, keep it tuned in for another 10, 15 minutes, and we'll get to there. ODU going down to Norfolk. Last time JMU played in Norfolk, Todd Centeio went off, absolutely dominated the Monarchs on their home field. Now they're returning back to Norfolk, see if they can do it all over again. But this is a good ODU squad that may be slightly under 500, coming off of a 28-20 loss in Boone, North Carolina against App State. ODU, they run this weird style of offense. They have a very innovative offensive coordinator and head coach. And last year when they played in Harrisonburg, that defense had no answers for their ultra spread you out type of offense. Colton Joseph, their redshirt freshman quarterback, had a great Georgia Southern game where he was absolutely torching the Eagles. But since then, he's kind of been up and down in his other starts. He's showed moments of being good. He's also showed moments of being a redshirt freshman. Is there anything you're keying in on in this game, Bennett? Because I think it's going to be a really good game, but I think JMU should be able to come out with a win.
Their slot receiver, Isaiah Page, is nice for ODU. I like him a lot. I feel like Joseph has thrown a lot of passes that should be picked that haven't been picked. I think he's got 3 interceptions and 10 turnover-worthy passes out of his like 170. So like every 17 passes, the dude's throwing one that probably like should be picked. So I think there's room to create turnovers against him and rattle him. He is a pretty young quarterback. He cooked Georgia Southern, but you're right. Outside of that, he's made some mistakes. I think he's a little fumbly too, if I'm not mistaken. At least his fumble grade on PFF has not been great. So I don't know. I feel like he's maybe a little turnover prone. I do like their offense. I like the scheme. Defensively, they're pretty solid even without Jason Henderson. And they're playing well at home. Their last 2 home games are wins over Texas State and Georgia Southern, 2 of what I think are the better teams in the Sun Belt. So they have been playing well at home. They opened the year playing what's now a ranked South Carolina and only losing by 4. Like, it's going to be a fight, I think, but I also think you can get the quarterback rattled a bit. You can slow him down a little. I think they have like decent running backs too. Aaron Young, a Rutgers transfer, is one that I was hoping the Dukes were going to get in the portal. I think I followed him at one point. He followed us back, and I was like, okay, this is on. He ends up at ODU. He's been nice for them, though. He's a pretty solid running back. So they've got good offensive players. The quarterback has some promise and can run. I think JMU has the edge, though, when JMU's on defense. And then if they can move the ball, it's certainly winnable. But ODU is going to be a dogfight. They've got some good players.
ODU runs the ball well, like you said, through Young. They rank 37th in the country in EPA per rush. Their defense is a good unit at stopping the run, but they can get got through the air. So this might be a good Alonzo Barnett game. But that offense hasn't been necessarily the best through the air. They have those high peaks, but Colton Joseph, it's singular. But Grant Wilson was bringing down some of those numbers to start the year. He was not that great when he was playing to start, which I think is a reason why he ended up getting benched. And Colton Joseph, I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about EPA, but he is having a 0.25 EPA per dropback, which is better than Alonzo Barnett. And Alonzo Barnett has a 0.01 EPA per dropback. So based on EPA per play, expected points added, which is a good measure of just overall general efficiency, regardless of opponent time, whatever it may be, Colton Joseph has been the more efficient quarterback throughout his entire body of work. Now, if you take what Alonzo Barnett has done against UNC, Charlotte, Ball State, Coastal Carolina, games where he has been healthy, I think it probably tells a different story. And now we're playing the what if games and doing all these qualifiers. At the end of the day, JMU is the better team. JMU has the better defense by far. But what will be interesting in this game, and it's the game inside the game that I'm going to be really keyed in on, is the third downs. How effective can you be on early downs to not set yourself up for long third downs? JMU averages a 3rd and 7.5, and ODU averages holding opponents to a 3rd and 7.9, which is 12th best in the nation.
Yeah, JMU is also sucked in conference play on the road. Like 2 games,
0-2.
small sample, but bad, real bad. And I think Chesney was saying that it's like an easier trip, like ULM and Statesboro are kind of weird, I guess, to get to. So maybe it's a little bit harder, and there's, getting to Norfolk is not particularly challenging.
81 South, 64 East, and then you're there.
So maybe that helps that it's an easier trip. We'll see.
Yeah. JMU just turn over Colton Joseph. He's going to give you the opportunities to turn him over. So turn him over. And then on your side of the football, get back to what you were doing against Georgia State, what you were doing early on in the season. Alonzo Barnett, scramble, find your big time throws when they're there, take care of the football like he has done exceptionally well this entire season. Don't take unnecessary sacks. Insert every cliche, but I think this is a game JMU should be able to handle. And it's against a former Fordham, that's a tongue twister, a former Fordham offensive coordinator that Bob Chesney has actually played against and is a little familiar with.
Yeah, don't look at those 2022 defensive stats, but
well, he didn't have Lyle Hemphill on his side.
That's right. It should be a fun game though. I'm looking forward to it. ESPNU. It's a big one. It means a lot, I think.
It should be a good one. All right. You want to go news or snooze or listener questions?
Let's do news or snooze first.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's taken a 2-week off hiatus, but it's finally back. News or snooze presented by Cinnamon Bear. Next time you're in Harrisonburg, check out Cinnamon Bear Bakery and Deli right across the street from the Atlantic Union Bank Center, right next to that Costco and that shopping center. They have fantastic baked goods, fantastic everything. So check them out next time you're there. Thank you to Cinnamon Bear for being the sponsor of News or Snooze. Bennett, let's go.
Okay, so this is an interesting one this week. I'm going to try to change it up. Look, I miss Kurt Cignetti. I know some people have been like, wow, Kurt Cignetti is like such a great soundbite now that he's in Indiana. No, he was always a good soundbite. You just weren't paying attention. Great soundbite throughout his career. Chesney's coach speak, man. It's a lot of coach speak. So to find some exciting quotes, we don't have Chesney just ragging on players in press conferences straight up, or telling the media they don't know ball. So it's a little disappointing in that regard. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to go through the next 3 games, and I want you to news or snooze the rivalry.
Oh,
so we're going to go one by one. We'll start ODU, JMU rivalry, news or snooze. You can take it wherever you want. You can talk football only. You can do all sports.
I think the JMU ODU rivalry is news. It is a rivalry.
Uh-huh.
It's not as big of a rivalry in football as the next one or basketball.
Uh-huh.
But I think they've done a really good job. JMU and ODU have at creating the Town Bank Royal Rivalry, I think is what it's officially called. But the Royal Rivalry, where you get points for each sport, each game means something. They've done a good job of that. And I know the old heads who are listening, the ghosts of the podcast, are probably screaming that ODU is the bigger rivalry because of what the games were like in the early 2000s. And kind of, granted, there's not a ton of history between these two teams, but they did face off a few times in the FCS days. So I think some of the old heads, no, I say that lovingly, by the way, the old heads, I think, care a little bit more about this rivalry than our generation and the younger generations do. It is a rivalry, but it's not as big as
App State. I assume
that's what I gotta say about the App State rivalry. It gets me so excited that I gotta sneeze about it. Look, this rivalry I don't think is as big in sports like the field hockey. It's
both MAC teams now, though.
That yeah.
Field hockey rivals.
I think I honestly don't even think it's that big of a rivalry in women's basketball.
Yeah.
because JMU's kind of dominated them. I think where this rivalry lives is football and men's basketball, because each time they've played, it's had huge meaning around it. App State has gotten the better of JMU during those meetings, took them down both times last year in Harrisonburg and in Boone in men's basketball. And JMU lost to App State on game day last season, and arguably the biggest game ever held in Bridgeforth Stadium. App's gotten their number the last few times. I think JMU fans have that percolating, and I think across generations, this game means so much more to JMU fans. Whether you're an old head, whether you're a young head, wherever you fall in that spectrum, you want to beat App State. And for me, it's the biggest rivalry with football and men's basketball. The other sports, not so much, where ODU is a more well-rounded rivalry.
Yeah, I think it helps that App's got like national football prestige, right? Like the Michigan upset is historic. They're pretty impressive at the FCS level, obviously, but they've been really competitive year after year after year at the FBS level. ODU's kind of sucked since coming to the FBS. Like they had essentially one good season in 2016 when they were 10-3. And outside of that, I think every year has been 6-6 or worse. Like they haven't had a winning season at the FBS outside of that 2016 year. So like a take the JMU fans won't love, but like if the ODU rivalry wants to become something more on the gridiron, ODU's got to beat them this year. Like that's what it's going to take. It's going to take an ODU win to be like, oh darn, like there's something there. Just like with Georgia Southern, the reason I think JMU fans are starting to be more bought into that one is because JMU's never won in Statesboro. Like they keep losing to Georgia Southern. So
The standard is the standard, Bennett.
The standard is the standard. I think that gets people fired up. So yeah, that's part of the reason App State, they've got a longer history, but they've also JMU's 5-13 all time against App State. So I think having those losses makes it a little more like, oh, I hate those guys.
And the games they've played are absolutely
Legendary,
amazing football games. Like there's the story of the playoff game where I think they overcome a 21-point second half deficit to win that. Then there's the game in Boone where they overcome 28-3, I think it was. Then there's even last year where maybe it was a fumble into the end zone. Maybe they messed up the call. Who knows? It was not a fumble. But like it was a touchdown. It was a touchdown. But like there's just so much drama around each and every game that it makes it so much fun too. Like they are two very evenly matched teams that it is a damn good pleasure that they are in the same conference at the FBS level, and we get that football game each and every year.
Yeah. All right, Marshall, news or snooze? Any budding rivalry there?
Snooze. I could give two shits about Marshall. And I know the Marshall Herdcast or whatever their fan podcast is. I think it's called the Herdcast. They do a great job. They're fantastic. They're awesome. Watch them clip that. I just don't think it's a rivalry. Like, I just do not think JMU Marshall has gotten to the point where it's a rivalry. Would I like to beat them? Yeah. But, like, I don't feel like bragging. Like, when I meet an App State fan out in the wild, I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? When I meet an ODU fan, I'm like, good luck beating us. And you kind of have that, like, air of superiority over them. Or I'm a Marshall fan, I'm like, we are, baby. Like, we are Marshall. All right, carry on.
Yeah, I hope that one and ODU can both blossom a little bit more, whether it's across sports or just in football. Because Marshall's one that they take the stuff. I feel like they take football more seriously than ODU, where I think that could be a really fun one if it does. But you're going to need some, like, again, some dramatic results in those games or some bad blood. When's the last time JMU got into like a shoving match with a team?
I would love some bad blood.
Give me some bad blood.
Didn't you have on the take purge, so it didn't technically exist, but you thought like Chesney would get into a fight with a coach?
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm tripping.
I got to go listen to that.
I swore one of us had the take of like Chesney's going to get into it with someone.
Could you say that he did with Biff? Wasn't Biff mad that he scored like a late touchdown or something?
Kind of, yeah. So I'm looking at it. Huntington is it does, so there. Yeah, I guess you could. To me, like in my mind, the way it's all laid out is like ODU's close, Boone is close to Harrisonburg, like geographically, but then Huntington's all the way over in West Virginia. But I guess when you look at a map, like Huntington is really the same. the same distance away as ODU.
Yeah, I could see that. I'd like to see that grow and do a little something. We'll see. We need some. One of them needs some bad blood. Bad.
I will say though, the other sports have good rivalries. They're like men's soccer has a really good rivalry with Marshall because Marshall's always a top tier team, and JMU has found ways to like get out draws, pull out some points in those. So I think that's one where the other sports are doing a good job with it, but it does need to rise up in football, men's basketball. Thank goodness Kim Caldwell is gone from Marshall, because that was a budding women's basketball rivalry, and now that she's left, I don't think it's. But we'll see how Marshall rebounds this year with their new coach. But yeah.
All right, listener questions.
Listener questions. Drum roll, please. That did some weird things to your mic. That was funny.
Oh no.
No, it just made a funny noise. Okay, so this first question is from our dear friend Dominic Palumbo. With JMU football's SP plus rating being so high, if the Dukes do run the table, how much of a missed opportunity is it going to feel like if they don't make the Sun Belt title?
Currently 31st in SP plus. They lead the Sun Belt in pretty much every advanced metric. Yeah, if they go 10-2, don't make the East Championship, and they're like the best with every metric and have a 20-point win over North Carolina, there's going to be some feelings of missed opportunity, especially if Georgia Southern loses one more, but not two more, where that ULM loss is going to really loom large.
Well, I think it's going to feel like a missed opportunity for us, but I also think Keith Gill is going to be in the Sun Belt office just kicking himself, being pissed about it, because like, if JMU, with all of these extremely favorable advanced metrics, which bowl games do look at, he's going to be pissed because he's going to be like, God, man, our Sun Belt champion is going to be playing in like not as good of a bowl as JMU. Like it's a missed opportunity for the conference too. Like it feels like what Keith Gill would have felt if JMU men's basketball didn't make the tournament, if they didn't win the Sun Belt tournament last year and not get in at that large. You're like, our best team is sitting at home playing in the NIT, and freaking Louisiana is in the NCAA tournament. It's going to get boat raced the first round. Kind of feels the same way here.
Yeah, interested to see too. Like Louisiana JMU would have been like if Louisiana had won that one loss, win over Wake, win over JMU, they would be maybe fringe college football playoff discussion if Boise State stumbled. So yeah, I think if you have like a three or four loss Georgia Southern playing for a conference championship, you're probably not stoked about that.
Yeah,
but hey, they would have earned it.
They would have earned it. They held JMU's offense to one touchdown, and JMU allowed a scoop and score against ULM, where if it bounces any other way, it would have not been a scoop and score. Josh Toner was literally inches away from
he almost made that tackle. Yeah.
If he makes that tackle, he saves JMU's season. Isn't that funny? like literally, like he gave it his all, but the way that ball bounced was like the perfect way for the player to scoop it and avoid the tackle.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Dom had a second question. Thoughts on the Sun Belt tournament format for hoops if you haven't talked about it already? I don't think we've talked about this tournament format. We have on Twitter, but not on the podcast.
We didn't?
I don't think so.
I like it, right? It rewards your best teams. The format is basically you're screwed if you're a low seed.
I think all mid-majors should do this.
I think so too.
I think all why play a regular season if it doesn't matter? Why play a regular season if you can lose in the quarterfinals of your conference tournament to the 10 seed? Reward a good regular season.
Yeah, get your best team as close as possible to the NCAA tournament.
But Bennett, what about the upsets?
Nobody cares. People overhype conference tournaments so much where they're like, oh, we love Cinderella stories. It's like, wouldn't you rather your conference's Cinderella story be in the actual NCAA tournament?
I also love there were people when I was talking about it like, but what about NC State? They went on that crazy run last season. And it's like two things. One, when was the last time that happened? That is a once in a blue moon type of thing, and we should not be creating rules for the outliers. Secondly, it still will happen in the ACC. It doesn't.
That's not a one bid league.
For one bid leagues, it matters who your team is because you need your best team in the tournament to win money. Like, what if JMU lost in the quarterfinals last year? Because I forget who they played in the quarterfinals, but it was a shaky game if I remember correctly.
can't remember, Texas State maybe or something like that.
Wasn't that the championship?
No, Arkansas State was the championship.
That's right. And Xavier Brown went off for 21 points in the first half.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I like it.
I like it too. I also do not care about one bid league upsets. I care about multi-bid league upsets. Like, it's fun when there's a bid stealer.
Yeah,
in
it sucks
an
if, like,
ACC tournament.
I don't like when a team in a low major like the Sun Belt balls out all year, and then they get clipped in one game. So then you have to watch some garbage team play in the NCAA tournament. Like, I want to see the best mid majors, low majors have a shot in the NCAA tournament. So yes, I think a format that rewards that is good for the conference. It's good for everyone involved.
Like, imagine if Vermont in the America East Conference just like gets clipped.
Yeah, it sucks.
That's a bummer. I want to see Vermont pull off the 14-3 upset.
Exactly.
This is from DJ Festivus. As we coin ourselves the everything school, how come we're only ranked 134th? How come we're ranked only 134th in the country in college athletics, according to niche.com? I would think we are higher based on our winning ways. It's because, never mind.
I wouldn't put too much stock into niche.com, but when people say like everything school, I want to say they more so mean like among mid majors, because yeah, like if you look at power conference schools, they're also good at more than one sport.
Most power conference schools are good at all sports
and would smoke and do sometimes smoke JMU in those sports. But in terms of like mid majors, JMU is very competitive nationally and doing a nice job. I think the everything school moniker is cool. It's good, and it shows some support for check out our DMs. Non power conference schools. I think that's what I was saying. I don't even know what I was saying. Anyway,
we both looked at it at the same exact time. Danny Wood asked, do you think the argument about rebuilding years is pointless now that every year will be a rebuilding year due to the portal?
This is a good question. I would say yes and no. Like, to a certain extent, there's always going to be more like rebuilding in the current system than there would be in other years. But also, like, from last year to this year was like a legit Chesney had to overhaul the entire roster and coaching staff, which does not seem like it'll be the case next year. Like, I would expect a bunch of coaches to return. I would expect a lot of really good players to return. So it's way easier to fill gaps in the portal than have to like build an entire team in the portal. So there's levels to rebuilding, I think.
I think we've heard a lot of people be like, we're not rebuilding, we're retooling. JMU doesn't fall off. We're like, I sometimes vomit in my mouth when I hear that, because like this last year was a rebuilding year. Like it was a rebuilding year. You had to do everything. The only thing that stayed was the culture. And that is something that can't be measured by any advanced metric, any stat. So I think, but moving forward, as long as you retain your coaching staff and retain your core of coaches, it's just a retooling year. You know what you need to get. Like right now, I guarantee you they've already identified their spots in the roster. They probably did while they were building the roster this year for who they're going to target in the port. Not necessarily who, like I want Joe Schmo from this school, but like, all right, we're going to need 4 corners. We're going to need 3 edges. And they've already started like the preliminary work of finding who is going to fit that. So I think it is now more than ever, we will get retooling rather than rebuilding. All right. Anything else you got to add?
Should we do a couple minutes on basketball?
Oh, that's right. We have basketball. Sorry, I forgot because they played Mary Baldwin last night.
Yeah, right game.
Your internet is having a fun time right now.
Is it hanging in? You're good. Hanging in?
You're back. You're back. Get back game.
It's battling.
It is battling big time. So they took down Mary Baldwin last night, 100-52. Elijah Hutchins Everett balled out for JMU. This is off the heels of a tough 83-69.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about Mary Baldwin. Give me your take on a Norfolk State loss? Go.
I don't care. Like I still think this team is going to be like a very good top end team who, like, by the end of this season will likely be able to beat last year's team. I'm still extremely bullish on them. It's tough to go down to Norfolk, and beat a Norfolk State team who's a good Norfolk State team. That wasn't a gimme game. I mean, they're not bad.
They had a bad result yesterday.
Oh, did they really? I
Yeah,
didn't
let me
keep up.
double check. No, I
But like,
saw it in passing and like then didn't they played at William and Mary and lost by 11, which had me a little
okay,
like ugh.
that's not great. But like a couple things. It's really hard to win on the road in college basketball.
Yeah.
It's tough to go to a Norfolk State school who's not great, apparently, because they lost by 11 to William and Mary, but like not horrible. And you just didn't play your type of game. There were times in that Ohio game, they looked like they had never looked at a basketball. Like they were just turning it over, sloppy play. And there were other times they looked like they were the world beaters and they were fantastic. Fortunately, the Norfolk State game, it looked actually no one really knows what it looked like because it wasn't streamed anywhere. But like you would assume that they also had rough patches and they just could not overcome it. Good bounce back game against Mary Baldwin, as we all expected. The fighting flying squirrels, I think they are, or just the fighting squirrels down in Stanton, who were an all girls school until 2017. Good dub.
Norfolk State game electric, right? You can't watch it. I think the JMU game day account or something tweeted something like upset about the loss. And do you see this? Norfolk State's head coach replied with like a
No,
screen. It was like a screenshot of like game notes or something that's like Norfolk State leads the all-time series and they've won like 18 straight home games or something.
I gotta find this.
It was so sick. He's like, well, actually,
He wasn't he a guy we had on our radar of like
he's a good coach. He's a really good coach. I think Robert Jones. So I mean, he's a good coach. They play at Towson this weekend, which is gonna be a nice test. I don't think I'll end up
that's a
going,
big test, but
but that's a nice test. So we'll see. We'll learn more about that one. And then they play in Daytona Beach, where I may actually try to get myself to one of those games in this little boardwalk battle tournament. They've
are
got
you
some
gonna be
games
down there?
coming up. What's that?
Are you gonna be down there?
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half from my parents' house. So I'm thinking about it. We'll see. No guarantees. But hey, they got a lot of games left where they can test themselves. We can learn more about them. I would not read too much into one game. Also, people after the Ohio game, I saw some takes that were like, "You've got to get the weight game for an at-large." Now we can just shut up about the at-large stuff. Like this team, if they want to make the NCAA tournament, they're gonna have to win the Sun Belt. Okay, so let's like the idea of the non-conference is to prepare them for the Sun Belt. It's year one of Preston Spradlin, year one of Byington. They took 2 L's at home to MEAC teams. And then they went on a nice conference run. So there's a lot of basketball left. Mark Freeman, I think, had 5 turnovers in the loss. It was like 3 of 11 from 3. Dude didn't play basketball last year.
Yeah.
There's going to be some rust. It's going to
Yeah.
be fine. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. This team's gonna be very good. This team is going to be very good. Yeah, Game Day tweeted the only reason to play at a team like Norfolk State is for quote unquote recruiting. Actually hurts more when you lose this bad. The game wasn't even streaming anywhere. Robert Jones from downtown responds, just in case you needed some info. In 5 meeting, Norfolk State's victory marks the 3rd straight over the Dukes. The Spartans now lead the all-time series 3-2. Norfolk State has now won 18 consecutive home games or 18 consecutive games at Joseph E. Eccles Hall, dating back to 2023 of February of 2023. Heck yeah, Robert Jones.
Heck yeah, tell him. I also don't think that's true on the recruiting thing. Like the only reason you play Norfolk State is to recruit players in Norfolk. I think part of it too is that's like a legit road test to help your team get a little bit better for Sun Belt play.
Yeah, I know we always make fun of the Coppin State road game too, where like they always would randomly play, but like one, the reports were that it's close to BWI and guys could then fly home for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever it was. But also like set yourself up for weird atmospheres. Like Coppin State is a weird atmosphere. You know what else is a weird atmosphere? The Sun Belt Conference tournament in Pensacola, Florida. When
Right.
you have 25 fans in the building. Like I completely understand it. Honestly, they should have scheduled this game last night at Mary Baldwin.
Do you also know what Norfolk State's KenPom is?
172.
They've dropped after the William Mary loss. So they were 192, but now they dropped to 216. Not great, but for comparison, Coppin State is 363.
Yeah.
So like when we were talking about like Coppin State's one of the worst teams in the country. Norfolk State consistently puts up like 21 seasons. Like this is a decent road test. You're going to get better for it. It's a weird one, but you can learn about your team there. Where like playing Coppin State, if you didn't win by 40, it was hurting you in the net. That's not
Yeah.
the same as this result. So
And
I'm okay with that road game.
And same with this road game on Saturday against Towson.
That's a
It's not
great
gonna
one.
it's not gonna destroy your net because Towson is, I mean, one of the contenders to win the Coastal Athletic
They're the
Association. They are,
favorite, yeah.
yeah. Pat Scarry is a great coach. I mean, that'll be a good game. And then around JMU sports as well, women's basketball, they're playing against number 6 Notre Dame here tonight. Coach O just said in his press conference before they left, we're not going up there to just hang out. We're going up there to win a basketball game. I love when coaches say that. Every
You hear the
team
rest of his
says,
quote?
no, what was it?
Backing off that statement a little bit.
Really?
It was really funny. I listened to it and he was like, we're not going up there. We're going up there to win. He's like, and we're going to try to do that. But like, they have some really good players.
I love it. They are 3-0, wins at Kent State, home against Loyola Maryland and ECU. Now they will have their second road test in South Bend, Indiana against the number 6 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Should be a great game. Peyton McDaniel has been a dog these last few games. That whole team has been a dog, and excited to see what they do. Men's soccer plays number 8 Marshall tonight.
Yeah, that's a big one.
In the men's soccer tournament in the Sun Belt, they took down the 3rd seeded UCF Knights 2-1 in the opening round, and they will take on the 2nd seeded Marshall Thundering Herd. Earlier this season, the two teams, did they play this season?
Yeah, 2-2
Yes.
draw.
A 2-2 draw. JMU looking for their first win over Marshall since their 1-0 victory in Huntington, West Virginia back in 2022. So should be a fantastic game. That game will be held in Huntington, West Virginia, so a de facto home game for the Thundering Herd in the Sun Belt Men's Soccer Conference Tournament. And the women's soccer team won the women's soccer tournament, and they will be facing off against number 3 Ohio State in the first round of the NCAA tournament. If you want to listen to a great conversation with Joshua Walters, the head coach of the women's soccer team, shameless plug for my other employer, it's over on ESPNRichmond.com. We had him. We talked to him about the Sun Belt tournament, talked to him about the upcoming game and kind of the season as a whole. So check that out. You can also follow him at ESPN Richmond to see when it drops immediately, and you can find the full interview on ESPNRichmond.com. Just click the podcast tab under Talking Dukes.
I love that.
Anything else? Field hockey fell, unfortunately, in the Sun Belt Championship game, 3-0.
We're getting toward the end of volleyball. They got a couple of matches to end this week, and then the conference tournament is coming up. Although they're 6-8 in conference, they're not necessarily expected to make a big run this year. Interested to see what goes on there. And then just to add some caveats for women's basketball, I know they're talking about going up there to win. Notre Dame just beat Purdue by like 50 in women's hoops. Like, that team is sick. So, like, honestly, if they hang at all or lose by like 20, it should be viewed as like a positive. This is a phenomenal test for them.
If they hang within
their
50,
hardest of the year.
You think the
Within
hardest
50?
of the year?
It's up. What Texas or NC State could be there.
Yeah, Texas at home though, which helps.
Their name's gross, man.
Yeah, I mean, if JMU loses by 60, I think that's fine.
If they win,
could you imagine?
Goodbye, Coach O. We're gonna miss you.
But should be a fun one. Anything else you got to add before we get up on out of here?
No.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning into the JMU Sports News podcast presented by Bet Online. If you haven't already, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. And you can comment and subscribe on our YouTube. Find us at JMU Sports News Network on YouTube. And you can follow along on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Just type in JMU Sports News in the search bar and we'll pop on right up. You can check out our home on the web, jmusportsnews.com, to find everything that's happening and get all the latest info. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.